That's the people that I help, who are people who are arguably qualified, who do not know how to present their case correctly, and a lot of times get caught in the subjective element of the visa interview and are denied unfairly.
My name is Amarjot Singh, and you are watching this video on my YouTube channel, where I offer people help on how to navigate the Canadian immigration and visa system. Routinely, I get calls for US visa help. And for that specific purpose, I have tapped a former US Department of State visa officer, Christa Byker. She was a visa officer, no longer, but now she's helping other people in their own US visa processes, people who want to look at how to apply for the US visa. Maybe they're facing a refusal, or perhaps they are afraid of the impending interview. So she helps in all these matters, and she has her own YouTube channel. And I will post her YouTube channel down below, but her YouTube channel is at the Visa View. So if you type the Visa View on YouTube, you will be able to see her, and then you can approach her directly for anything that is happening in your own personal US visa application. So let me just welcome Christa one more time. Christa, welcome to the discussion. I'm glad that you made time to talk to me.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. My whole purpose now in communicating about the US visa process on YouTube and online is to help people understand what they're going through. This Department of State, which is the department in the United States that administers all the visa processes, they're very black box. They don't actually want people to know that much about the visa process. And a lot of people go in blind to this process. So my goal with all of my activity being here with Amjart today and everything that I'm doing on YouTube is to help people understand what they're getting into and how to best go through the visa process.
Yeah, let me try to start the discussion by asking some layman questions. Most people are afraid, if not intimidated, by the US visa interview. When they pass through a US embassy, big embassy, they see the star and stripe, and then they are imagining that they are walking into the building for a possible interview, and they are afraid on what will the US visa officer ask that person. What do you think is the summary that the US visa officer is looking to obtain from the applicant?
Well, it obviously depends on the visa type that they're applying for. So it will vary depending on whether or not they're trying to get a marriage visa or a tourist visa or a student visa, right? But fundamentally, across all of the visa types, the visa officer is trying to make sure that the person is not lying to them, is not fraudulent, and that they qualify for the visa class that they're applying for. So what is it that the visa applicant has to do in order to get prepared? They have to understand the requirements of the visa class they're going to apply for. This is empowering the applicant. Yes, you can hire a visa consultant like myself. Yes, you can hire a lawyer like Amjad. That is a good idea in many visa cases, but you can't just let the applicant can't just let the professional run the case and understand the case. The visa applicant has to be empowered to understand their own case, understand the requirements of the visa class, and go into that interview prepared to talk about their qualifications as they're related to the requirements of the visa class. And the really important thing here to remember as well is that the Department of State does not allow attorneys or anyone who's not associated with the case to attend the interview. So again, that's why it's so important that stuff like this, that like what we're doing right now, trying to educate people about the US visa process is so important, because they're in there alone and they have to understand what they're getting into and have to understand the requirements of the visa class and how to communicate their qualifications.
Good. Let's start with the typical B1, B2 application, which is a visitor visa application, the US US has a presumption that anybody who is trying to enter America, I'm sorry, not can
Yeah.
enter America, that person is likely an immigrant. So the person should better prove that he or she has an intent to return. And many people who are from not so-called developed countries, like less developed countries, they are trying to go to US under the guise of a visitor visa, and maybe to find ways to find a job or marry or somebody to settle there. How successful is the US visa officer to sniff out the immigrant or non-immigrant intent in that brief interview?
So this is for the B1, B2 visa, I would say that this is probably one of the hardest visas to interview for, just because it's all so subjective. And like you said, the visa applicant is proving a negative in their visa interview. They are proving that they are not an immigrant. So having to prove a negative, as we all know from anyone who's studied, logic, is very difficult task. And so it becomes very subjective. You have to be prepared to convince the visa officer that you do not intend to immigrate. And so if you just go into the visa interview answering the questions, like, you submit your DS-160, which is the form you have to submit to get the interview, has all your bio data and all kinds of different information. If you just submit that form and then you go to the visa interview and just have one-word answers, like say they say, what do you do for a living? Business. Okay, what kind of business? I have a motorcycle store, a shop. Okay, how many employees do you have? 3. Okay, how much money do you make, right? This is a typical visa interview where the applicant is not prepared at all to show their qualifications, and the visa officer just has to fish for information the whole time. Okay, what do you do? How many employees do you have? How much money do you make, right? All of these repeat or follow-up questions. This is when you know your visa application is going terribly. You need to take advantage of the questions at the visa interview to give them the context about your life. So every question that you get at a B1, B2 visa interview, you need to be thinking about with my concise response, can I communicate that I have strong ties to where I live and that I would like to return to those ties after a short trip to the United States.
Can we play a mock interview game here, in which you are the visa officer, and I will pretend to be somebody who is from a third world country, who does not have a stable job in my home country, has low funds, and I'm trying to just enter US to settle in, to find maybe some place of living permanently and a future green card or something. So can we play a little mock interview, if you may?
Okay. Sir, where would you like to travel in the United States?
I'd like to travel to New York to see the Statue of Liberty.
Okay, what do you do for work?
I have a small job. I'm a carpenter, and my salary is pretty much whatever is about 25,000 rupees, Indian rupees.
Okay, and who are you going to visit in the U.S.?
I don't have anybody, but if you give me the visa, I'll book a ticket and then book my hotel accommodation. But I don't have anybody there.
So you're traveling by yourself to visit no one?
Yes.
Okay, your visa's denied.
there goes my $160.
For a visa officer, it makes no sense to travel alone to visit no one. That is the worst story you could give for a visa interview. It doesn't make any sense. Most people do not travel alone to visit no one. It's clear that there is a intention behind what you're saying and honestly, it's maybe some dishonesty, because it's like, yeah, you probably know someone in the US who can give you a job, right? You wouldn't just go and not know anyone. So it's just the whole story you just gave is not credible at all for a tourist visa interview. And I would think that person would be denied in like under a minute. The thing that visa officers really hate when applicants do is like, I want to go to New York to see the beautiful Statue of Liberty and the Empire State Building. They just, they read, like what they say at their visa interview is like they're reading Wikipedia. It's not personal. Right? Or like students, they'll be like, I want to study. Why do you want to study at this college? I want to see the beautiful green campus with acres of trees and founded by Jeremy Smith in the year 1829. It's not credible. Like when you just say these things that sound like you're reading them off of Wikipedia, the visa officer is like, okay, like that doesn't sound like the what you're actually going to be doing. So making your story more personal is very important. But as a person in a situation like you're saying, where they have a low salary, a job that's not professional, they don't have any studies, they're going to have a hard time getting a tourist visa, no matter what they say at the visa interview. That's the kind of person who, if they really want to go work in the United States, they should check out EB-3. Because EB-3 is a green card process for working in the US. But for just going to get a tourist visa and then trying to, and their real intention is to stay and work, that's not going to be a successful case. And honestly, they shouldn't be, they should be trying to go through the immigration process honestly, either through marriage or through a work visa. But just doing it through a tourist visa is going to get them into a lot of trouble and a lot of problems. And honestly, in the current immigration landscape with Trump, it could get them deported. So that's not something I would recommend anyone doing. You have to go honest to the visa interview, and you have to be fairly confident that you qualify for the visa class that you're applying for, or else you risk having denial at the visa interview, or being turned around at the border, or later down the line, if you're doing things that are dishonest, getting deported. All that kind of stuff is just, you don't want to get involved in that. But if you're someone who does have, good intentions, you're really going to visit someone and you intend to come back to your home country, and maybe you have what they call like a borderline case where the visa officer maybe isn't understanding you, or you're giving too short of answers. If you're someone who's at least semi-professional, or you've been in your profession for a long time, right? You would have a better chance of convincing the visa officer that you qualify, and that your intentions are honest, and that you intend to go to the US to do what you say you're going to do. That's when you're going to have the best chance of issuance. And especially if you prepare and you get ready for genuine answers, concise, and that tell the visa officer something about your ties back in your home country. But going with the purpose of deceiving, you're probably going to be denied. And according to US visa law, rightfully.
Yeah. Here's the problem. If my response is expected to be genuine, I will likely never get the visa. Most likely my psychology, most likely, not always, most likely my psychology is, I have a low salary. And I'm surprised you didn't ask me later on after my salary how much money I'm carrying or how much money do I intend to spend. But let's look at the typical profile of people who will likely need your help, and they are desperately looking to enter US to settle themselves, and they are looking for a new life. So most likely I have a low salary. I have absolutely low funds. Know anybody, and intention.
But let me just interrupt you. If you are looking to settle in the United States, you should be looking at an immigrant visa. You should not be applying for a tourist visa.
Absolutely, I totally agree. But here's the problem. I'll add this problem in a minute. So my primary purpose of going to US is to find a way to settle in. Find means, for example, either through finding a job, either through finding a marriage partner, either through finding some other kind of, if I had those money, I could have been an investor or treaty investor visa or EB-5 or something. I don't have those. I don't have those professional college degree to apply for H-1B. I cannot get a L-1. All these professional categories are pretty much close to me. That's why I was hoping to enter as a visitor and maybe try to contact an immigration lawyer to seek ways to find asylum or something similar. That would have given me like a EAD or work authorization, so I can make some money for a few years. That is my genuine intention. If I reveal my genuine intention, I'll be thrown out of the embassy.
Well, thrown out of the embassy, no, but you won't get the visa.
I know, yeah. Okay, all right. I got I understand, but I wanted people to understand that.
So if your genuine intention is to settle in the United States, you need to start talking to an immigration lawyer about your options. Because like I said, the EB-5, obviously they're not going to be able to invest $1 million in the United States. But there is a category called EB-3, which is for unskilled workers. And it's for people who do not have a college education and are going to do unskilled labor in the United States. So there are options, but you have to contact an immigration lawyer to understand them. Just trying to get a tourist visa and figure out your way once you're in the United States, you're very unlikely to be successful. And the people that I help with getting prepared for the visa interview, because I think what you're assuming is only people who are genuinely unqualified and have the intention of settling in the United States are denied. That's not true. This is a very subjective visa application, and people who are genuinely qualified, who do not intend to stay in the United States permanently, and have some qualifications in their background in terms of studies or job, or maybe they're older and they just, even if they're not very wealthy, they're not working age, they're not looking to go start over a life in the United States, they just want to visit a sister or an aunt or someone who's in the US. Those are people who would have a good chance of getting approved if they present their case correctly. Someone who has no solvency, is working age, it doesn't matter how they present their case, they're not likely to be approved. But there are a lot of people who are arguably qualified, but they're denied anyways because they don't know how to communicate their qualifications. And that's the people that I help, who are people who are arguably qualified, who do not know how to present their case correctly, and a lot of times get caught in the subjective element of the visa interview and are denied unfairly.
Do you, in your personal practice, do you also help people starting from the stage of filling the DS-160 form so that information is correctly presented, relevant information is correctly presented?
So there's a lot of, like, again, subjective elements to the DS-160, and depending how you put them in there, the visa officer is going to interpret your case one way or another. So, for example, if there's a part where you can put your contact in the United States, someone that you know in the US. My advice is always to put someone who is related to the visa class you're applying for. So if you're a student, put the international student coordinator. If you're going to work on any work visa like an H or an L or any of those visas, put someone related to your company. If you're going for just tourism, put someone who you're actually going to visit, not like a cousin, like you were saying in your mock interview, a cousin 8 states away. Put someone in the vicinity of where you're actually going to be. Because if you put something in your US contact that is unrelated to the visa, to your purpose of travel, you're going to confuse the visa officer. They're going to be like, well, why are you putting your cousin who lives in Las Vegas when you're planning to go to Denver? That doesn't make any sense, right? Yeah. So you're always wanting to present the DS-160, everything you put in there, in a way that the visa officer is going to understand the best. They're not going to have additional questions. They're not going to be confused.
When the US visa officer is on his or her computer and the person is called at the window, the visa officer has likely seen all the information on the screen in advance of the person appearing at the window, correct?
No, that's one of the myths about the visa interview. People think that, oh, they've studied my case, they've looked at all my social media, they've, done a background investigation on me. That's not true. When they are calling you up to the visa interview, they are opening your DS-160, and this is the first time they've seen anything about your case. And so that's why it's that's why I say that the visa interview is subjective, because it's a snap judgment. They're gathering these little, what I call micro impressions about your case, gathering all of that together in a very short amount of time and making a quick decision. And that's why the applicant's interview style and how they approach their interview is so important. If you go unprepared and just blind, you can fall into a lot of traps in the visa interview and cause an unfavorable impression in that little window you have to convince the visa officer that you're qualified.
Yeah, that is same for Canada interviews as well. Wherever Canada interviews people, I always tell people that if you have never taken this kind of interview ever in your life, you better prepare, write these questions, write these answers, and know what you have to say, because believe it or not, you will not get the second chance to answer that question, and you better know what you cannot afford to make mistake. Okay.
And a lot of people that I see, they go to the visa interview thinking, oh, this will be easy, I don't need to get prepared, it's quick, I qualify, it's fine, right? And then they get refused. And when I would say at least 60% of the people I talk to have already been refused, and now they're like panicking, like, oh, how do I get ready for this? And it's like, well, first of all, you missed a really good opportunity, because the first time is the best time to get approved, because the visa officer, what they're looking at on their screen when they open up your case is your DS-160, but also they have in their system, like very obvious to them, how many, like your prior applications and the outcome, the visa class, the date, and the outcome of that interview. So as soon as they see you've been refused before, okay, now they're starting to think, what happened at the last interview? Why did my colleague think that they weren't qualified? And that is clouding their view of your case. And you have to get an approval after a refusal. I would say you almost certainly have to have preparation, because like I said, the visa officer's judgment of your case is now clouded by the prior refusal, and you need to be very strategic about how to overcome that prior refusal.
Yeah. Does it matter to the visa decision maker if the person already has traveled to countries like Canada, England, Australia, and other big countries before? Does it matter to them? Does it has a positive influence?
Yeah, so I talk about, like, in order to make this all more understandable to people, I use certain phrases, and one of them is green flags and red flags. So a green flag for a visa officer is prior international travel. You have, by leaving your home country and going, say, to the UK or going to Canada or going to Thailand, somewhere in your region, this is showing that you have already done what you're applying for a tourist visa or a student visa. By having gone somewhere else and going back home, you are showing that you are capable of doing what you say you're going to do in the United States, which is travel to the US and then leave after your temporary stay. And so prior international travel is a huge green flag for the visa officer.
Does the US visa system, the software, the visa system, do you have access to if the maybe that person was refused in some other countries before, like for example, let's take an example like this person who has been refused for Canada twice or thrice, and now he's trying for US. Would you know that he has been refused for Canada by looking at his name and date of birth and stuff?
There's some information sharing between the US and Canada, so depends on what happened in the Canadian system, but some of that will show up in the US, yeah.
And that is obviously a factor, because is there one of the questions in the DS 160 that have you been ever refused for some other country before, or US?
No, only the US.
Only the US.
It asks you if you have residence in another country, but it doesn't ask you, have you ever been refused? I do think it says, have you ever been deported? And that applies to any country, but not have you ever been refused for a visa in any country.
As I was mentioning to you previously, there are marked differences between the Canada visa application system and criteria and US. This is one example that I can clearly point out, is that in Canada, they ask you, have you ever been refused for any country, including US or something? And if that person acts smart and say, hey, no, I've never been refused, but he was refused for US, and the Canada finds out, not only they are refused, but they are banned. They are inadmissible for 5 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Any country.
That question isn't specific in the DS 160, but that may show up in the visa officer's system. And if they ask you, hey, have you ever applied for a Canada visa, or what happened with your Canada visa, you better be prepared to talk about that as well.
Yeah. What about criminal background? I mean, would your system show that this applicant has had any crime or crime history or drunk driving or something in the local country? Would you be able to see that?
It really depends on the country, where there's information sharing between certain countries and the United States. Other countries don't share their local. I mean, and some countries have like such disorganized local police force that they wouldn't even have, a way to communicate. It's not electronic, that kind of thing. So again, anything you've done in your background where you've been, and it does ask on the DS 160, have you ever been arrested? And that's not just in the United States. So if you have been arrested, you better be honest about it on your DS 160. And once you say yes on any of those questions about like security on the DS 160, a little box comes up, and you have to write in like what happened. My best advice there is to make sure, a lot of people, they type like a paragraph, like this long about what happened, and it's very detailed and everything. And that's actually not the best approach. You need to be very concise and to the point, obviously very honest and thorough, but concise in those responses. And that's, again, another thing that we were talking about when I assist people with the DS 160. If they have any of those yes answers where they have to type in a free form answer, I try to help them present the information in the best way that the visa officer is going to understand it, which is thorough but very concise, to the point. And whenever you answer a question on the DS 160 like that, or even at your visa interview, if you have to communicate something negative about your case, like, yes, I was arrested for drunk driving in 2002, or something that is kind of negative in your background, you always want to end on a positive, right? Yes, I was arrested for drunk driving in 2002 in my home country. I really regret that situation, and I have not had problems with alcohol since then. I am, and I'm not an alcoholic, or something like that, right? Like, you want to express, yes, this happened. I take responsibility for it, but my life has changed, and this is not going to be a problem for me in the future. You don't want to just, again, these one-word answers are terrible for your visa interview. You need to use those answers to convince the visa officer of whatever you're trying to convince them. In this case, that you're not, irresponsible.
Yeah. Friends, we are closely exceeding the time limit allotted to me, but there are many questions that I'd like to ask Christa about different classification. But I will round this off with my last question, and one of my favorite mock interview. So I'm going to give Christa a situation, and she will interview me, and let's see how it goes from the US side of view. So I am a beneficiary of a I-130 application. I-130 application, guys, is a let's say a union, and that she is sponsoring me for a green card. So that means I'm married. I have a marriage certificate. I have submitted an application to USCIS, and now the U.S. Embassy is suspicious whether my marriage is genuine and bona fide. And now I've been called for an interview. And now the U.S. visa officer is trying to establish whether I married in good faith or I'm just trying to use the marriage as a way to immigrate. So I'm ready for your questions, Krista.
Okay, how did you meet your spouse?
Facebook.
And how often do you communicate?
I try to communicate with her, but she doesn't have time. She is working, and we get to talk sometimes, maybe once or twice a week.
Have you ever met in person?
Yes. After the short meeting, she came here to meet me here, and we got married here.
Okay. Do you have photos of your time together and documentation showing your conversations and when you guys have called each other, or any written electronic messages you've written to each other?
Unfortunately, we took a lot of photographs, but the photographs were in that phone, which we lost, or it got corrupted. So we don't have access to those photographs. But I have some few photographs, 5 to 10 photographs about a marriage ceremony or marriage related ceremony.
When's your wife's birthday?
I think it's on. Is it on August 15 or August 16? I think it's somewhere in the August. Maybe it's August 15.
Okay, what we're going to do going forward is she's going to have to come for an interview in order to resolve this.
Oh my God! I knew today's not my lucky day.
Well, for marriage cases, especially when it's like a long distance, electronic, mostly relationship, you're going to have a lot of proof of your conversations. You're going to want to print those out and make sure it's apparent that you guys are actually communicating. And then photos are good, and the photos, not just like you two together as a couple, but like with your social context, sharing a life together, friends and family. And like, know the basic facts about your spouse. You don't even know her birthday. There's no way I'm approving that visa.
Well, glad to know. In my own professional capacity, I do specialize in these kind of interviews. Like these are called bona fide, genuine marriage interviews, and I take mock interview sessions and there are many of them on my YouTube channel for at least these interviews last like 1 hour, sometimes more, and they ask you a lot of probing questions.
If you're going to immigrate through marriage, make sure it's a marriage that you actually want to stay in, and that you're committed to, so that you don't have problems like this. But people still, they get into this problem, they get into these interviews that are very probing and difficult because they go unprepared to their interview and they get nervous, right? I know my spouse's birthday, but if I were super nervous and like don't know what I'm doing there and I've never practiced, it's possible that you could be like, oh God, like I'm so nervous. I can't even, they can barely speak, let alone recite, basic bio data and all that. So getting prepared for the interview is a way of gaining confidence so that on the day of the interview, you are not overtaken by your nerves and delayed by these additional questions and additional interviews and having to provide all this proof when really you're in a bona fide marriage and there's no problem, but you're just bad at interviewing. And so I always recommend visa interview preparation, not just for the tourist visa or the student visa, which are very subjective. These marriage cases are also important, especially when the person who's interviewing is nervous. Because if you get actually prepared, your nerves will go down, you'll be able to express yourself better, and it will be a smoother process for you.
Hey, great. On that note, I will conclude our conversation today. Hey, thank you very much for your time. And guys, if you need help, if you are facing an interview, the best thing is that you should contact Christa, and I will post her information down below this video, so that you can directly message her and take an appointment from her. And then you better be prepared if you want to get this visa in your passport. Otherwise, it's a waste opportunity, waste money, and then possibly for the next attempt, for the subsequent attempts, it will become even harder. So
yeah, that's right. I really agree with everything you're saying there. Make sure that you qualify for the visa that you're applying for, get ready for it, and make sure that you know that at the interview you are ready to impress the visa officer, that you're concise, that you're convincing, and that everything that you're presenting in what you're saying conforms to the requirements of the visa class, and you're much more likely to be successful. And honestly, you're much more likely to not be so nervous, not be so anxious about the process.
All right. Thank you very much, Christa. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.